सदन की ओर से राष्ट्र के वैज्ञानिकों को नमन करता हूं। अध्यक्ष महोदय।
श्री शशि थरूर जी।
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. I'm honoured, really, to stand before this House and to speak on behalf of my party on a matter of great pride for Indians everywhere in the world, the success of our lunar mission, Chandrayaan-3, and according to the topic you've given us in the revised list of business, success of Chandrayaan-3 mission and other achievements of our nation in the space sector. I think my respected friend, Sri Rajnath Singh, treated us to a lecture on a slightly different subject. But on August 23rd, Mr. Speaker, we scripted history as our unmanned moon mission's lander module made a flawless soft landing, making us only the 4th country to achieve this feat and the first to reach the uncharted south pole of Earth's only natural satellite, the Moon. It is fitting, sir, that as you proposed, we observe August 23rd as National Space Day in future. How far we have come since the late 1950s, when a classic photograph by Henri Cartier-Bresson showed Indian rocket parts being transported on a bullock cart. Let me take you back, sir, nonetheless, to when our nation's scientists, led by Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, began to develop the contours of India's nascent space program in the early 1960s. Back then, the coastal village of Thumba, in the outskirts of Thiruvananthapuram, was identified as an ideal location, given its latitude and natural geological features, to allow for rocket launches and allied research. Imagine, friends in this House, a sleepy village with golden beaches and palm-fringed coconut trees, populated largely by an overwhelmingly Catholic community of fisherfolk. The catch, however, was that the community of scientists had identified a piece of an area of land, which housed in Thumba the St. Mary Magdalene Church and the residence of the bishop himself, Peter Bernard Pereira, his own official residence. Now, in any other community or any other part of the world, even, the matter might have been put to rest right there. After all, the idea, the thought of displacing an active spiritual establishment would certainly have evoked outrage and fury, especially in today's India. But in this relatively obscure part of India near Thiruvananthapuram, where a decision of national importance and scientific progress presented itself, the community chose to make a remarkably patriotic choice, a choice for development and progress. When initial conversations with politicians and bureaucrats made little headway, something special happened. One day, when Bishop Pereira was sitting in his little office in the church, he heard a knock on the door. He said, "Who is this?" And a man in a white suit came and said, "I am Dr. Vikram Sarabhai." Dr. Sarabhai explained the importance of this area to India's scientific research in space. The bishop understood the proposed mission of the scientists, and he told Dr. Sarabhai, "Come to my church on the following Sunday." So during the Sunday service, Dr. Sarabhai was there, and Bishop Pereira presented a proposition before the congregation. "My children," he said, "I have a famous scientist with me who wants our church and the place I live in for the work of space science research. Dear children," he said, "science seeks truth by reasoning. In one way, science and spiritualism seek the same divine blessings for doing good for the people. My children, can we give God's abode for a scientific mission?" The answer from the congregation was quite literally a resounding Amen. The church and the bishop's house, as well as other neighbouring inhabited areas, were handed over without protest to Dr. Sarabhai and his team. Thus was established in 1962 the Thumba Equatorial Rocket Launching Station, or TERLS, which would later be renamed Vikram Sarabhai Space Centre after the death of the legendary Dr. Sarabhai 9 years later. A year after TRLS was established, India launched its first two-stage rocket, our first foray into space, from Thiruvananthapuram. As our late President, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, who was part of the original launch team in 1963, and he went on to work from the church building himself. He wrote later, looking back at this remarkable episode, "Today among us, Professor Vikram Sarabhai is not there, Reverend Dr. Bernard Peter Pereira is not there, but those who are responsible for the creation and make the flower and blossom will themselves be a different kind of flower, as described in the Bhagavad Gita," he said. And he quotes the Gita, "See the flower, how generously it distributes perfume and honey. It gives to all, gives freely of its love. When its work is done, it falls away quietly. Try to be like the flower, unassuming despite all its qualities." That is what a lot of ISRO's foundations have been, sir. Unassuming, but with the power to change the world. One of the world's oldest and most ambitious, it arose from the physical research laboratory established in Ahmedabad in 1947, the year of our independence and the brutal partition with Pakistan. Our visionary first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, then created the Indian National Committee for Space Research, or INCOSPA, marking our country's official entry into space exploration. This committee was set up on the recommendation of the Scientific Advisory Committee to the Cabinet for the promotion and exploration of space and its utilization for peaceful purposes, a committee led by the legendary Homi Bhabha. Then, in 1962, as we've seen, TRLS was established. On 15th August 1969, our 22nd Independence Day, under the trusted guidance of Vikram Sarabhai, INCOSPAR and TRLS became the Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO giving Indian space a developmental boost. There was a tragic setback, as I mentioned, when Dr. Sarabhai died suddenly of a heart attack at the age of just 52. Dr. Satish Dhawan, the head of the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore, was invited by then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi to lead the organization, because she knew that the vision and legacy of Vikram Sarabhai could only be fulfilled by someone like Dhawan. He accepted the invitation, though on condition that the headquarters be shifted to Bangalore, and guided ISRO as a leader who is still admired by many. In July of 1979, sir, our first satellite launch vehicle failed, and Mr. Dhawan, an exemplary leader, took responsibility for it. He gave a statement saying, "Dear friends, we have failed today. I want to support my technologists, my scientists, my staff, so that next year they succeed." The very next year, they did succeed. This is ISRO's history. Every setback became a stepping stone to greater success. And so we Indians are proud of our space program for good reason. Since then, ISRO has undertaken missions to the moon, Chandrayaan-1, 2 and 3, and the failure of 2 became a stepping stone to the success of 3, to Mars, the Mangalyaan Mars Orbiter mission, and we have created our own launch vehicles and satellites. Moreover, of course, as the Speaker has said, India launched the Solar Observatory Aditya L1 this month and aims to put 2 or 3 people into low Earth orbits by the end of this year, to emulate the legendary Rakesh Sharma, who orbited the planet on a Soviet spacecraft in 1984. Notably, Indian space research is the only program which has been a civilian program from the very beginning. We are focused on the development angle, like the use of space for rural development, weather forecasting and communication, in addition to high-end research. And this, sir, is just the beginning. India's space program is set literally to skyrocket. Experts predict that India could account for at least 10% of the global space economy in the next decade, up sharply from 2% currently. India's space program bolsters our development, having made important contributions even in seemingly unrelated areas such as disaster management, education, healthcare, agriculture, fisheries and urban planning. Moreover, it serves India's global diplomacy as well, sir, enhancing our credibility and influence. Those who once scoffed at the idea that a poor developing country aspired to send rockets into space must concede that India is now a technological force to be reckoned with in the world. To my mind, there is yet another sterling triumph within India's Chandrayaan moment. It has become a good occasion to recognize the alumni of unsung engineering colleges everywhere in India. Indians are rightly and justifiably obsessed with the IITs, but Chandrayaan-3's landing, especially 4 years after the failure of Chandrayaan-2, was attributable to many, many scientists from far less glamorous educational backgrounds. While the ISRO chairman, S. Somnath, is a product of TKM College of Engineering in Kollam, represented by my friend Premachandran, at least 8 of his other colleagues graduated from the College of Engineering, CET, Thiruvananthapuram. Somnath Institution was founded in 1956 by a successful Muslim cashew merchant, Tangal Kunju Musliar, abbreviated soon enough to TKM, and has gone on to establish a stellar local reputation, while CET in my constituency, established in 1939 as the first engineering college in then Travancore state, retains its record and repute as the premier engineering college in the state of Kerala. Yes, at least 7 more engineers from CET were involved in the Chandrayaan-3 success, and there were others. There were others, alumni from small engineering colleges in Tamil Nadu, in small towns throughout India. We've had graduates of these small colleges contributing to ISRO because, let's face it, we must yes, indeed, it was in the very first launch, Dr. Abdul Kalam. We must proudly salute these alumni of unsung engineering colleges because they serve the public sector with dedication and are the backbone of national enterprises like ISRO. As I wrote on social media at that time, if IITians went to Silicon Valley, CETians took us to the moon. I would also like to point out that many of the stalwarts in our space program have been women scientists and engineers. Some 20% of ISRO's key personnel are women. And as women increasingly excel in science and technology studies, this number may only go up. And unlike in our parliament or legislative assemblies, they won't even need reservations either, sir. I can tell you from my experience of addressing many convocations, no, I'm in favor. But I have been giving away prizes at many convocations of science and technology and engineering colleges. And even when the women students are a small minority, maybe 20–30% of the student body, there are 90% of the medal winners, prize winners, and honours winners. This is becoming increasingly a woman's field, and we'll all be the better for it, sir. Now, the only thing that disappoints me today is that some in the government seek to make this their moment to bask in glory and polarize the country by speaking as if all space endeavours only began in 2014. First in the ancient years of the Vedas, and then in 2014. I mean, that's what we're hearing today. Now, the truth is, sir, that our space successes are a consequence of continuity in our national governance, and what has been achieved today stands on the shoulders of many past achievements, as I have described to you with my stories earlier. Any mature democracy would recognize that grooming the brilliance of our scientists, developing infrastructure, R&D, and global synergies on technology cannot be achieved unilaterally by any one government. This is the achievement of successive years of making the right governance choices. For example, we've heard so much about Aditya L1 mission. It began in 2006, sir. It took 17 years to be conceived, planned, executed, and finally launched this year. Thus, the Chandrayaan triumph is truly pan-Indian. Across, I hope, the political divide, it does not belong to any one person or any one party. If we all came together yesterday to affirm the solidarity we all feel for women's reservation bill, let us also come together, sir, to recognize the collective contributions of all governments in bringing glory to India's space endeavours. But after all, who can deny India owes its remarkable progress in space exploration in large part to Pandit Nehru's dedication to developing a scientific temper amongst the Indian people, his understanding of technology's role in national development, and his faith in the country's scientists. Though India was indeed beset by poverty, illiteracy, food insecurity, and disease, Nehru knew that it must and could aim for the stars. We did not have much money, and we relied on ourselves. Nehru's doctrine of self-reliance, though he didn't use the word Atmanirbharta, the concept was there. within very tight budgetary constraints, had an enduring influence on India's space program, exemplified by ISRO's decision, even in this Chandrayaan-3, to take a slower, fuel-saving approach to the moon. Both Mangalyaan and Chandrayaan-3 were the least expensive ventures of their kind, costing about a tenth of equivalent NASA, the American space missions. They cost less even than Hollywood depictions of space. Mangalyaan costs less than the Hollywood film Gravity, and Chandrayaan costs less than Interstellar. The shoestring budget was only 615 crore. Not just, much cheaper than G20, what our government spent on it. But this is not just a small fraction of what the US spent, but not even a third of China's budget for its own moon mission. ISRO's last 40 years spending is equivalent to NASA's 6 months of expenditure. That is the history we have to understand, sir. But they should not be punished for it. I'm looking at my good friend Jitendra Singh there. The Department of Space's budget has shockingly been slashed by 8%, down to 12,553 crore from the 13,700 crore that we were all presented in the budget estimates, sir. The cuts are highest in space technology, including the Human Spaceflight Center, as well as developmental and operational projects involving satellite launch vehicles. And space science, including space missions, has been cut by 32%. Why? NASA, sir, has been allocated $25.4 billion in 2023, and ISRO has the equivalent of $1.5 billion. That is the situation, sir. Our government needs to be more generous. Now, I want to stress that ISRO's strengths extend well beyond frugality. For Chandrayaan-3, India has also demonstrated familiarity with the major types of interplanetary spacecraft: orbiters, landers, rovers. The Chandrayaan-3 rover is rudimentary, but it speaks to an important focus area for the Indian space program, the planning and implementation of high-tech scientific missions. The data from Chandrayaan-3's scientific instruments will be crucial, because the mission will be the first to physically, chemically and thermally characterize the soil, subsoil and air near the moon's south pole on location. No other country has done this. India has some measure of technological superiority now compared to most other spacefaring countries, and it should press the advantage by going to more places in the solar system. And of course, we must conduct stellar science. The better space-based scientific instruments currently operated by India are largely concerned with Earth observation and remote sensing. With a focus on indigenous development of technologies and techniques, we have become a premier manufacturer of both launch vehicles and satellites, and a sought-after provider of low-cost launch services to other countries. Our Polar satellite launch vehicle, with 24 successful flights, has a proven track record, and the world record that has been mentioned of the launch of 104 satellites in one go has already been applauded by the Honourable Speaker. So we have all of this to talk about. Chandrayaan-3's success strengthens the confidence with which India faces the world. The country has spent the year, as we all know, presiding over the G20, though, as has been pointed out by my colleagues, we spent much more on it than we did on ISRO or on the Chandrayaan mission. But it is an influential voice for the global south. This adds to our prestige and our clout. We are also playing leading roles in other international bodies. How these relationships and how our global role generally, more broadly, will evolve remains to be seen. We are having unfortunate controversies going on this week with Canada. But nonetheless, the country's achievements in space undoubtedly strengthen our diplomatic hand, not least because of the respect they inspire in other countries.
Thank you.
I'll just take 2-3 minutes, sir. Among the foreign countries that have used India's space program to launch their own satellites and benefit from space cooperation include France, a space partner since 1964, which has supported India's development of launch vehicle satellites, applications and spaceflight, has also launched several satellites using our PSLV and GSLV. Russia, another long-term collaborator on various aspects of space exploration, including some of these same things, and Russia have supplied key components for the crew module of Gaganyaan, and the US, with which India has a strategic partnership in space, covering areas such as Earth observation, satellite navigation, space science, planetary exploration, launch services, and human spaceflight. So France, Russia, and the US are all involved with us. And ISRO tells us that India has pursued bilateral and multilateral relations with space agencies and space-related bodies, with the aim also of strengthening existing ties with these countries, taking up new scientific and technological challenges, refining our space policies, and defining international frameworks for exploitation and utilization of outer space for peaceful purposes. This is the diplomatic strength I'm talking about. So the US, Israel, Singapore, Canada, Germany, Indonesia, Japan, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, South Korea, the UK have all launched their satellites using our Indian PSLV and GSLV. And as a result, the government has earned $174 million from these launches alone. It's all the more a pity that our government has trimmed the budget for space education and research between last year and this one, even though on the whole our expenditure on space has gone up, and I know Jitendra will tell us that. Educating the next generation of Indian space pioneers ought to receive more funding. I'll conclude, sir, by recalling the proud moment when India's lander touched down on the moon and Prime Minister Narendra Modi wisely resisted parochial triumphalism of the kind we've seen later, and he hailed the achievement as a victory for all of humanity. But he also correctly noted that the achievement mirrors the aspirations and capabilities of 1.4 billion Indians. By showcasing its technological prowess, India's space program reminds the world not only of our innovative capabilities, but also of our capacity to help shape solutions to global challenges in other areas, from cyberspace regulation to peacekeeping. Looking up at the sky after Chandrayaan-3, Indians can contemplate a glorious global future. We are showing the world that India can be a standard setter rather than just a follower of rules made by developed countries. New horizons beckon, for the world is now our canvas, or should I even say, the whole universe. Jai Hind, sir. Thank you very much.
कुछ आपको कहना है क्या? Okay.
We are at home now. We are at home now.
It's
Please.
not my speech.
Okay.
So,
she's member also.
No, I'm just wanting to intervene for a minute. It's just an intervention. Have patience. Have patience. Just something very important.
Please.
Sir, I want to make an observation, sir. Dr. Shashi Tharoor ji, you're a very learned and senior member. It's very enriching to listen to his ideas every time he participates in the debate. So you said a lot of good things, sir. But I didn't want to disrupt him in the middle of his speech, but I hope I heard you correctly. You said something in between which I don't much agree to. So you mentioned, if I heard you correctly, I repeat, that there are lots of women, there are lots of girls who are entering the field of science and technology, and hopefully we would see many of them working under our space programs. So unlike our parliament, they wouldn't need reservation to be a part of the space program. I don't much agree to this, sir. It's not very appropriate.
Okay.
Please take it in a healthy light, sir.
Okay.
Yesterday, listen to me, sir. Let me complete. Just yesterday, we passed a very historic bill providing reservation to women inside the parliament. So it doesn't sound very appropriate because, women don't just have this chair because of their capabilities and we should never.
नहीं ये इस ढंग से डिबेट तो नहीं चल सकती. नो प्लीज सिट डाउन. हाँ जा बस क्विक आप बैठ तो जाइए. नहीं आप बैठ जाइए.
Your party has supported this very historic bill,
श्री ए राजा,
which means you agree to the idea of providing reservation to women for them to reach
जी आप बैठिए प्लीज. ओनली ए राजा, ओनली नो आप भी बैठ जाइए. बाद में बात कर लीजिएगा प्लीज. मिस्टर ए राजा, नो एक सेकेंड. मिस्टर थरूर बैठ जाइए. प्लीज बैठ जाइए. नो भाई अधीर जी आप बैठ जाइए. आप बैठिए तो सही, आप भी बैठ जाइए मैम, नथिंग इज गोइंग ऑन नाउ। ओके नाउ प्लीज, एक सेकंड क्या कहना चाहते हैं आप? अरे आप बैठिए ना अधीरदा।
I would like to clarify, since the minister, the honourable minister, is also a good friend, appears to have misunderstood the thrust of my remarks. I would like to clarify that I meant no disrespect to either women in general or the very many honourable women in this House who have been elected without any benefit of reservation for all these years.
Okay.
We have said, sir, that we need reservation because the numbers are not enough. And that is why we passed the Women's Reservation Bill yesterday. I'm saying that in science and technology, we already have 20% in ISRO and the numbers are going up, sir. That's my point. That's it. Thank you.
जी
सर
हो गया, कुछ कहना है आपको क्या?
सर
अध्यक्ष महोदय, मुझे लग रहा है we need not carry this further because I'm very sure and I trust my friend Shashi ji has never been anti-woman.
जी
मिस्टर चेयरमैन सर,
ओके लेट, ठीक है
मिस्टर